Picture this. Two superpowers locked in a decades-long stare-down. The air crackled with suspicion. Every chess move on the global board felt like it could trigger, well, you know. The Cold War, a time of brinkmanship, clashing ideologies, and enough fear to fuel 1,000 spy novels, where sometimes the only thing scarier than your enemy was the guy in charge of the big red button. And you know what's wild? All that nail-biting tension, that constant paranoia, that very real potential for world-ending kaboom, somehow it became a playground, a digital sandbox for us gamers. Alright, let's set the scene for those of you who might be newer to this historical heavyweight. World War II was just ended. The dust has settled, and the world is trying to piece itself back together. But instead of a unified global hug, two dominant superpowers emerged from the rubble, each with wildly different ideas about how the world should work: the United States and the Soviet Union. The US championing democracy and capitalism, and the USSR pushing for communism, found themselves in this ideological tug of war. They never directly went to war with each other, hence the name Cold War, but they were locked in this intense decades-long standoff. Think of it like two heavyweight boxers circling each other, throwing jabs through proxy conflicts, espionage, and a constant arms race, especially when it came to nuclear weapons. From the heavily guarded borders of the Iron Curtain snaking across Europe, a very real division between East and West, to the knife-edge drama of the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the world genuinely held its breath. The Cold War wasn't just a chapter in a textbook, it shaped global politics for nearly half a century. It seeped into everything: our movies, our music, and even our nightmares. It wasn't just a simple case of East versus West, good guys versus bad guys. It was this incredibly complex, multi-layered chess match played out on the entire world stage. Every move, every alliance, every whispered threat carried weight. And that global chessboard, with all its intricate pieces and potential for dramatic twists, turns out it was absolutely perfect for video games. I mean, talk about high stakes. Alright, let's get strategic now. Let's step into the shoes of the guys, and maybe some gals, calling the shots. Games that really zoomed out and looked at the big picture. Take something like DEFCON. Man, that game, it strips away all the heroic fluff and gets right down to the bone-chilling reality. In a nuclear war, nobody wins. It's this stark, almost abstract representation of mutual destruction. You're making these calculated moves knowing that one wrong click could paint the whole map red. It's less about fun and more about a really unsettling statement. Then you've got a masterpiece like Twilight Struggle. That's Cold War politics distilled into a literal board game. Influence, coups, that constant tug of war for global dominance, it's all about calculated risk, reading your opponent, and knowing when to push and when to back down. It's not just a simulation of the era, it gets the underlying tension, that constant push and pull between the two superpowers. These aren't just games you play, they're experiences and make you think about the weight of those decisions. But the Cold War wasn't all about grand strategies and missile launches, was it? A huge part of it actually played out in the shadows. The whispers, the secrets, the clandestine operations. If you weren't planning massive battles, chances are you were trying desperately to avoid them. and video games dove headfirst into the shadowy world. Think about Metal Gear Solid. You're not some gung-ho super soldier charging into the fray. You're Snake, a ghost, a master of infiltration. The whole vibe of those early games, the sneaking around, the tense encounters, it perfectly captured that feeling of operating in the dark, where one wrong step could blow your cover and have massive consequences. And then you've got games like Phantom Doctrine. Now, that is pure Cold War spycraft. We're talking dossiers, brainwashing, double agents lurking in the shadows. It's got that classic noir tension, like you stepped right into a John le Carré novel. Managing your network of spies, uncovering conspiracies, it really puts you in the mindset of those shadowy figures who were fighting a war nobody officially acknowledged. Of course, not every game about the Cold War aimed for gritty realism. Sometimes you just want to crank up the dial to 11 and say, Cold War, but make it explode with more explosions. Enter the Black Ops series. These games took the historical backdrop and injected a healthy dose of Hollywood action. We're talking number stations, whispering secrets, mind control conspiracies that would make your head spin, and intense shootouts in the jungles of Vietnam, a major proxy war in the Cold War narrative. They took the paranoia and the potential for global conflict and turned it into a high-octane thrill ride. And then, bless its ridiculous heart, there's Red Alert, where Albert Einstein, in a stroke of time-traveling genius, decides to erase Hitler from history and somehow manages to create an even bigger problem, a powerful, technologically advanced Soviet Union steamrolling across Europe. It's gloriously over the top, a wild alternate history that still taps into the underlying East versus West tension, even if the premise is pure, unadulterated fun. So, where does this leave us? These games, ranging from the deeply strategic to the wildly imaginative, they walk this fascinating line between education and pure entertainment. Are they always historically accurate down to the last detail? No, definitely not. But they are reflective. They show us how we, as a society, process this complex period of history, our lingering fears, and the ever-present question of power and ideology. The Cold War in video games isn't going to replace history books, that's for sure. But it is incredibly engaging, sometimes thought-provoking mirror, reflecting our understanding, and sometimes our glorification of a time when the world held its breath. And in their own pixelated way, these games keep the conversation going. So that's my take on the Cold War in video games, but now I want to hear from you. Which Cold War game do you think tells the most compelling story? Which one really nails the atmosphere or just provides the most fun? Drop a comment down below. I always love reading your thoughts. And hey, if you dig this kind of deep dive into history through the lens of gaming, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss the next historically gaming adventure, and come back next Thursday for another look at the past, one pixel at a time. Bye!